This is the history of Transnistria. See also the history of Europe. Before 1792, Antiquity. In ancient times the area was inhabited by Thracian and Scythian tribes. Pliny the Elder names the Taragetai a Getai tribe living on an island of the Dniester, the Axiaca living along the Tiligal River, and the Krobizi, a Thracian tribe living beyond the Dniester. At the mouth of the river, the ancient Greeks of Miletus founded around 600 BC a colony named Iris, which was located outside present-day Transnistria. It fell under the dominion of native kings whose names appear on its coins, and it was destroyed by the Dacians about 50 BC. In 56 AD Tyras had been restored by the Romans and henceforth formed part of the province of Lower Moesia, which also included Dobrija and northeastern Bulgaria. Romans settled colonists in Tyras and maintained some legionaries in the area until the 4th century. Historian Theodore Mommsen wrote that Moldavia and the south half of Bessarabia as well as the whole of Wallachia were incorporated in the Roman Empire. All these facts confirm the creation of defensive earth dikes from the Prut River to the Tyras area, in order to defend these new territories of the Roman Empire. Furthermore, Mommsen wrote, Bessarabia is intersected by a double barrier line which, running from the Prut to the Dniester, ends at Tyra and appears to proceed from the Romans. The walls, which 3 meters in height and 2 meters in thickness, with broad outer fossa and many remains of forts, stretch into almost parallel lines, from the Prut to the Dniester, may be also Roman. In the late Roman period, the extent of control and military occupation over territory north of the Danube in actual Bessarabia remains controversial. One Roman fort is well beyond the Danubian limes and near actual Moldavia, would seem to have been occupied in the 4th century AD, as were bridgehead forts along the left bank of the river. In this Roman fort built by Constantine I, researchers have found even a Thermae building in the 1980s. In the 4th century the Goths conquered Tyras and Olbia on the coast, but the final destruction of those merchant cities happened with the Attila invasions 1 century later. Middle Ages. The area of Transnistria was under the rule of the Goths, who, in the 4th century, were divided into the Turvingi and Gruthungi tribes, the border between them being on the Dniester River. Transnistria was an early crossroads of people and cultures, including the South Slavs, who reached it in the 6th century. Some East Slavic tribes may have lived in it, but they were pushed further north by Turkic nomads such as Pechenegs and the Cumans. In the 10th century, the Volahov are mentioned in the area in the primary chronicle. Indeed, some academics believe that on the coast between the Dniester and Danube rivers there was a Romance-speaking community until 1050 AD, that was destroyed by the Pechenegs. Transnistria was inhabited mainly by the Cumans, and wars against them may have brought the territory under the control of the Kievan Rus at times around the 11th century. It became a formal part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania in the 15th century. On the coast, the Byzantines built a fortress in the area of the destroyed Tyras and named it Aspracastrin. In the 14th century, the city was controlled and renovated by the Republic of Genoa, that established their call and a counter-trade until the Ottoman conquest. A small part of the population of the city escaped the Turkish invasion, founding up north a small village that later became the actual city of Tiraspol, now capital of Transnistria. Meanwhile, the territory was divided after the Crimean Khanate conquered the southern part, which was included in 1504 in the region of Yedison and was under the control of the Ottoman Empire until 1792. The northern part remained under the control of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, as part of the historical region of Podolia. The border between the two states was set on a brook known in Moldavian chronicles as Irlik and in Polish sources Jehorlik. Moldavia started from its nucleus in Bukovina and soon reached Prut, and by the end of the 14th century the Dniester, which was set as their easternmost border. While there were some Moldavian military incursions beyond the Dniester in the 15th century, the earliest written evidence of Moldavian settlement beyond the Dniester dates from the 16th century. A 1541 letter written by Suleiman the Magnificent to Polish Sigismund II Augustus says that some of his Moldavian subjects plundered Tyana and Akerman and then retreated and settled in the Polish territory. Modern era. While the territory beyond the Dniester was never politically part of Moldavia, some areas of today's Transnistria were owned by Moldavian boyars, being given by the Moldavian rulers. The earliest surviving deeds referring to lands beyond the Dniester date from the 16th century. Moldavian chronicle Grigor Uresh mentions that in 1584, some Moldavian villages from beyond the Dniester in the Polish territory were attacked and plundered by Cossacks. Many Moldovans were members of Cossacks units. Two of them, Joan Podkowawa and Danila Apostol, were hetmans of Ukraine. Along with a nomadic Nogai Tatar population, the area was populated by Romanians, Ukrainians, and Russians. In 1927, Columbia University professor Charles Upson Clark wrote that the lower Dniester was an almost purely Romanian stream since 1792. Russian Empire. In 1792, the southern part of Transnistria was ceded by Ottoman Empire to the Russian Empire, whereas northern part was annexed in 1793 in Second Partition of Poland. At the time, the population was sparse and the Russian Empire encouraged large migrations into the region, including people of Ukrainian, Romanian, Russian and German ethnicity. Russia began attempting to lure Romanian settlers to settle in its territory in 1775, after it gained the largely uninhabited territory between the Dnieper and the Bug, but the colonization was to be in a larger scale after 1792 thirds to Transnistria and beyond, when the Russian government declared that the region of steppes without population between the Dniester and the southern Bug was to become a new principality named New Moldavia, under Russian suzerainty. Indeed, the colonization had reached in the centuries before the Kiev area, and in 1712 even the Don River, with the Dmitry Cantemir leadership. Plots of tax-exempt land were distributed amongst Moldavian peasants, while 56 Moldavian boyars received large estates which they helped colonize. Dozens of new villages were founded during this colonization stage, which lasted until 1812, when Russia annexed Bessarabia and Transnistria ceased to be a borderland. In the 1890s there were the following fully Moldovan villages in the Bug River area: Isia, Gradinita, Savatika, Belkorka, Malayashti, Flow area, Tei, Kosaka, Butrul, Purprita, Goiana, Siklia, Korotna, Sioburseni, Spear, Karagasiu, Tazlik, Dorothka, Vaznisevska, Moldovka, Sikanta, Kuzanovka. Indeed, in 1893, according to official data, there were 532,416 Romanians in Kherson and Podolia, 11,813 in Ekaterinoslav, and 4,015 in Tauridia. But the real data were estimated up to more than 1 million. 1917 to 1924. During World War I, representatives of the Romanian speakers beyond the Dniester participated in the Bessarabian national movement in 1917–1918. asking for the incorporation of the territory in Greater Romania. Nevertheless, Romania ignored the request, as it would have required a large-scale military intervention. At the end of World War I in 1918, the Directory of Ukraine proclaimed the sovereignty of the Ukrainian People's Republic over the left bank of the Dniester. After the Russian Civil War in 1922, the Ukrainian SSR was created. Soviet-era Moldavian Autonomous Republic in Soviet Ukraine. The geopolitical concept of an autonomous communist Transnistrian region was born in 1924, when Bessarabian military leader Grigor Kotovsky proposed the founding under the auspices of Moscow of the Moldavian Autonomous Oblast that months later became the Moldavian ASSR of Ukrainian SSR. In 1927 there was a massive uprising of peasants and factory workers in Tiraspol and other cities of southern Ukrainian SSR against Soviet authorities. Troops from Moscow were sent to the region and suppressed the unrest, causing around 4,000 deaths. According to U.S. correspondents sent to report about the insurrection, which was at the time completely denied by the Kremlin official press. During the 1920s and 1930s, thousands of Romanian Transnistrians fled to Romania, the government of which set up a special fund for the housing and education. A 1935 estimate puts the number of refugees to 20,000. MASSR had a mixed Ukrainian and Moldovan population, which was estimated at 545,500. Its area was 8,677 square kilometers and included 11 raions on the left bank of Dniester. According to the 1926 Soviet census, the republic had a population of 572,339, of which, while the creation of ethnic-based autonomous polities was a general policy of the Soviets at the time, with the creation of the Moldavian ASSR, the Soviet Union also hoped to bolster its claim to Bessarabia. Soviet authorities declared the temporarily occupied city of Chisinau as de jure capital of the ASSR. The concept of Moldavian ethnicity theory was also born there, including the Moldovan language created through the Cyrilization of the Romanian language spoken by approximately one-third of the autonomous republic's population. At the time, the population of Moldavian ASSR was 48% Ukrainian, 30% Romanian, Moldavian, 9% Russian, and 8.5% Jewish. In 1940, 6 of the 14 districts of MASSR were included in the new created Moldavian SSR, together with a part of Bessarabia. According to the Soviet census of 1926, in the districts of Kamenka, Ribnita, Dobasari, Grigoriopol, Tiraspol and Slobozia, a territory roughly similar with today's Transnistria, there were 44, 11% in Moldavians, 27, 18% Ukrainians, 13, 69% Russians, 8, 21% Jews, 3.01% Germans, etc. World War II. To the Moldavian SSR, which was set up by a decision of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR on 2 August 1940, was formed from a part of Bessarabia taken from Romania on June 28, following the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where the majority of the population were Romanian speakers, and a strip of land on the left bank of the Dniester in the Ukrainian SSR, which was transferred to it in 1940. In 1941, after Axis forces invaded Bessarabia in the course of the Second World War, they advanced over the Dniester River. Romania controlled the entire region between Dniester and southern Bug rivers, including the city of Odessa, as Transnistria. The territory called Governorate of Transnistria, with an area of 44.00 square kilometers and a population of 1.2 million inhabitants, was divided into 13 Counties: Ananiev, Balta, Bizovka, Odessari, Golta, Jugostruz, Muvilau, Oshikov, Odessa, Ovidiopol, Ribnita, Tiraspol and Tulsan. There were in this enlarged Transnistria nearly 200,000 Romanian, Moldovan-speaking residents. The Romanian administration of Transnistria attempted to stabilize the situation in the area under Romanian control. It was implemented a process of Romanianization. To this end, it opened all churches previously closed down by the Soviets. In 1942, 1943, 2,200 primary schools were organized in the region, including 1,677 Ukrainian, 311 Romanian, 150 Russian, 70 German and 6 Bulgarian. 117 middle and high schools were opened, including 65 middle schools, 29 technical high schools, and 23 academic high schools. Theaters were opened in Odessa and Tiraspol, as well as several museums, libraries, and cinemas throughout the region. On the 7th of December 1941, the University of Odessa was reopened with 6 faculties: medicine, polytechnical, law, sciences, languages and agricultural engineering. The Romanians, Moldavians in Ukraine east of the Bug River were calculated by German census to be nearly 800,000, and were made plans to move them to Transnistria in 1942-43, but nothing was done. A far more likely figure was that given by Romanian Daily in March 1943. It reported that, as of the summer of 1942, 23,000 Moldavian families had been located in Soviet territory east of the Bug. A group of these had been made to make records of the folk music, in order to preserve proof of the permanence of the Romanian element in the distant east. Probably there were only about 100,000 Romanians, Moldavians in the German-occupied Ukraine called Reichskommissariat Ukraine, and nearly all of them disappeared when the Soviets reconquered the area in early 1944. Furthermore, by March 1943 a total of 185,000 Jews had been murdered under the Romanian and German occupation. This figure includes Romanian and Ukrainian Jews deported from Romania and Bessarabia, but also local Jews who were hunted down by the Einsatzgruppen killing squads. The Soviet Union regained the area in spring 1944, when the Soviet army advanced into the territory, driving out the Axis forces. Many thousands of Romanians, Vlachs of Transnistria, were killed in those months or deported to gulags in the following years. Moldavian SSR. The Moldavian SSR became the subject of a systematic policy of Russification. Cyrillic was made the official script for Moldavian. It had an official status in the Republic, together with Russian, which was the language of interethnic communication. Most industry that was built in the Moldavian SSR was concentrated in Transnistria, while the rest of Moldavia had a predominantly agricultural economy. In 1990, Transnistria accounted for 40% of Moldavia's GDP and 90% of its electricity production. The 14th Soviet Army had been based there since 1956 and was kept there after the fall of the Soviet Union to safeguard what is probably the biggest weapons stockpile and ammunition depot in Europe, which was set up in Soviet times for possible operations on the southeastern theater in the event of World War III. Russia was negotiating with the Republic of Moldova, Transnistria and Ukraine for transit rights to be able to evacuate the military materiel back to Russia. In 1994, the 14th Army headquarters were moved from Moldovan capital Chisinau to Tiraspol. War of Transnistria. Mikhail Gorbachev's policy of perestroika in the Soviet Union allowed the political liberalization at the regional level in 1980s. The incomplete democratization was preliminary for the exclusivist nationalism to become the most dynamic political force. Some national minorities opposed these changes in the Moldavian political class of the republic, since during Soviet times, local politics had often been dominated by non-Romanians, particularly by those of Russian origin. The language laws, introducing the Latin alphabet for written Moldavian and requiring proficiency in the Moldavian language for public servants, presented a particularly volatile issue as a great proportion of the non-Romanian population of the Moldavian SSR did not speak Moldavian. The problem of official languages in the Republic of Moldova has become a Gordian knot, being exaggerated and, perhaps, intentionally politicized. This displeasure with the new policies was manifested in a more visible way in Transnistria, where urban centers such as Tiraspol had a Slavic majority. The scenes of protests against the central government of the Republic were more acute here. According to the census in 1989, the population in Transnistria was 39.9% Moldavian, 28.3% Ukrainian, 25.4% Russian, 1.9% Bulgarian. On the 2nd of September 1990, the Transnistrian Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic was unilaterally proclaimed as a Soviet republic separate from Moldova by the Second Congress of the People's Representatives of Transnistria. However, on the 22nd of December, the Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev signed a decree regarding the measures that would bring the situation back to normal in the Moldavian SSR. The decision stated that the proclamation of the Transnistrian Moldavian SSR was null and void. On the 25th of August 1991, the Supreme Council of the PMSSR adopted the Declaration of Independence of the Republic. On the 27th of August 1991, the Moldovan Parliament adopted the Declaration of Independence of the Republic of Moldova, whose territory included Transnistria. The Moldovan Parliament asked the government of the Soviet Union to begin negotiations with the Moldovan government in order to put an end to the illegal occupation of the Republic of Moldova and withdraw Soviet troops from Moldovan territory. After Moldova became a member of the United Nations on the 2nd of March 1992, Moldovan President Misha Sniga authorized concerted military action against PMR forces which had been attacking police outposts loyal to the Moldovan government on the left bank of the river Dniester, and on a smaller section of the right bank around the southern city of Tiana. The PMR forces, aided by contingents of Russian Cossacks and the Russian 14th Army, consolidated the control over most of the disputed area. Forces of the 14th Army and the Russian Federation in turn, stationed in Transnistria, had fought with and on behalf of the PMR side. PMR units were able to arm themselves with weapons taken from the stores of the former 14th Army. The Russian 14th Army's role in the area was crucial to the outcome of the war. The Moldovan army was in a position of inferiority which prevented it from regaining control of Transnistria. A ceasefire agreement was signed on the 21st of July 1992.